I would love to say that things get simpler from here, but that would be a lie. I'm sorry. The show rules. If your brain is currently mush after watching Netflix's Dark, you are not alone. The German time travel series, which revolves around 4 interconnected families in the small town of Winden, requires an incredible amount of mental gymnastics to track all of the complicated relationships spanning a timeline that ranges from 1921 to 2053. But don't worry, we're here to unravel the intricate web of the Kahnwalds, Nielsens, Tiedemanns, and Dopplers. Let's start with the Kahnwalds. Although Dark is largely an ensemble drama, there's no doubt that Jonas Kahnwald is at the center of everything. Jonas is the son of Hannah and Mikkel Kahnwald, also known as Mikkel Nielsen, the boy who goes missing at the start of the series. Jonas hooks up with Martha Nielsen prior to Mikkel's suicide in June 2019. But he realizes they can never actually be together once he finds out that Martha is actually his aunt. A future version of Jonas comes to Winden and attempts to destroy the wormhole in the caves, but in the process, he winds up becoming the one who actually created it. In 2053, Jonas discovers the God particle inside the power plant and is able to stabilize it and travel through it to 1921, where he discovers he's actually the man behind all of this drama, Adam. As we learn, Adam is the one who actually created the God particle, and he's trying to launch a war on God and time, like whatever the hell that means. I don't understand. It's bad. It's bad. Now it gets hard. That's because Jonas's father, Mikkel Kahnwald, is actually Mikkel Nielsen, the youngest son of Ulrich and Katarina Nielsen. An aspiring magician with a great onesie, Mikkel is the brother of Martha and Magnus Nielsen. Magnus is fine, Martha's fine. We'll get to them. When Mikkel tags along with his siblings and a group of their friends, including a teenage version of Jonas, to the Winden Caves in 2019, Mikkel travels through the caves to 1986 with the help of a future version of Jonas. After being treated by Inez Kahnwald at the hospital, Mikkel is adopted by the nurse and begins living under the name Mikkel Kahnwald. While raising Mikkel, Inez drugs him repeatedly, seemingly because she actually does suspect that his stories about coming from the future are true and she doesn't want him to leave. But even if that is the case, that is not a good reason to drug a child and basically kidnap him, because if she believes those stories are true, then she knows he has another family out there and she is keeping him from them. At the hospital, Mikkel also meets a teenaged Hannah. The two eventually go on to wed and have their son Jonas. Mikkel takes his own life in June of 2019. He does this after a future version of Jonas shows Mikkel his own suicide letter, and Claudia Tiedemann tells Mikkel that his death is a necessary sacrifice to save the world. As for Jonas's mother, Hannah, her defining characteristic is her obsessive love of Ulrich Nielsen. Which, I get, he is super hot, but she takes it to a whole other crazy level. Okay, wait, marry, kill. Adult Ulrich, adult Jonas, or Wooler. The two had an affair in 2019, but Ulrich ends it after the disappearance of Mikkel, who grows up to become Hannah's late husband Michael, because this love triangle is f***ing insane. After Hannah learns about time travel, she goes to 1954 where she visits Ulrich, who is locked up in a psychiatric hospital for reasons I will get into in a moment. Hannah doesn't believe Ulrich when he says he finally loves her, and so she decides to leave him locked up and start a new life in the past. Oh, Hannah! And whose mother is she, Living in 1954, she's gonna be revealed to be some old woman we know, or Katarina's mom, or some crazy like that. On to the Nielsens. Let's get into this nonsense. While Ulrich Nielsen may have gotten trapped in the past, we first meet him in 2019 when he's working in law enforcement alongside Charlotte Doppler. When Ulrich's son Mikkel disappears, he is driven to find him at all costs, in part because his brother Mads had disappeared in a similar fashion in 1986. While investigating what happened to Mikkel, Ulrich realizes that Mads is the boy who's found dead in the woods in 2019 because time travel is f***ing weird like that. Ulrich travels back in time to 1953 to try and prevent his brother's death, where he is arrested for the death of 2 other young boys, Yasin and Eric, and for the attempted murder of Helga Doppler by Egon Tiedemann. As a result of this, and his continued insistence that he is a man sent from the future to the past, Ulrich is trapped in a psychiatric hospital from 1954 through 1987. In addition to Mikkel, Ulrich and his wife Katarina also have 2 other children, the eldest son Magnus and the middle child Martha. There's really not a lot to say about Magnus other than he's dating Franziska Doppler, and he grew out his hair and it looked better. And it's revealed in season 2 that a future version of Magnus serves Adam in 1921. He's also one of the 2 people who activates the God particle that allows Adam to travel to 2020. Although she still had feelings for Jonas, Martha was dating Bartosz Tiedemann when Jonas returned to school after the death of his father Mikkel Kahnwald, who was also Martha's younger brother Mikkel Nielsen. Even after Martha learns that Jonas is her nephew, her feelings for him don't go away. Bleh, bleh. But before the two of them can figure out what to do with all of these confusing, incestuous feelings, Martha is actually killed by Adam shortly before the 2020 apocalypse. However, there is another version of Martha from an alternate universe who is still alive and comes and takes Jonas to safety before the world ends. Mikkel, Magnus, and Martha's mother is Katarina Nielsen, who is the principal of the local high school and is married to her high school sweetheart, Ulrich. In 1986, Hannah files a false police report accusing Ulrich of raping Katarina in the hopes of driving them apart. But Katarina believes Regina Tiedemann reported her, which is what caused the bad blood between them that still exists in 2019. After Ulrich and Mikkel both go missing, Katarina is determined to find them and is last seen opening the passage in the Winden caves around the time of the 2020 apocalypse. Tronte and Jana are the parents of Ulrich and Mads Nielsen. While married to Jana in 1986, Tronte has an affair with Claudia Tiedemann, who he lived with as a child after him and his mother Agnes moved to Winden in 1953. When Mads' body falls through a crack in time in 2019, Tronte follows Claudia Tiedemann's instructions to move his son's body into the woods so that his other son Ulrich can find it. Tronte's mother Agnes is the daughter of Erna and the sister of Noah. In 1954, Agnes has an affair with Doris Tiedemann, whom she meets when she rents a room in their house. She was previously a member of Adam's organization Sigmundus, but she had left prior to the 1950s. She later infiltrates Sigmundus as a double agent and kills Noah, an act which allegedly demonstrates her allegiance to her great-great-grandson Adam, aka Jonas. This is probably all very overwhelming, so let's just take a quick meditation break. All right, done. Still with me? Great, because now it's time to get into the Tiedemanns. The youngest in the family is Bartosz, who is the only son of Regina and Alexander Tiedemann. Left vulnerable by his jealousy over Martha and Jonas's relationship, Bartosz is manipulated by Noah into helping him and into not trusting his grandmother Claudia. He eventually realizes that he's working for the wrong side and shows Martha, Magnus, Franziska Doppler, and Elizabeth Doppler how to time travel. Bartosz's mother, Regina, is undergoing treatment for breast cancer in 2019, and she used to run the only hotel in Winden, which used to be the Doppler family estate, before it was shut down. Regina is the only child of Claudia Tiedemann, with whom she had a very troubled relationship, and she is also the lifelong enemy of Katarina Nielsen. Regina meets her future husband Alexander in 1986 when he intervenes in a fight between Regina and Katarina. Born Boris Niewald, he arrives in Winden after being involved in the still unsolved double murder in Marburg and stealing the identity of Alexander Kohler. Living under his new name, Alexander gets a job at the nuclear power plant, which is run by Regina's mother Claudia Tiedemann, and in 2019, he's running the plant. In 2020, the brother of the real Alexander, investigator Clausen, has the fake Alexander arrested for identity theft. Regina's mother Claudia is the daughter of Doris and Egon Tiedemann, and she becomes the first woman ever to run Winden's nuclear power plant. After her future self visits her in 1987, Claudia becomes a time traveler and starts studying the God particle, which she first learned of from Bernd Doppler. Also, her dog travels through time. I would never want to lose my dog as a child, but can you imagine any joy better than being this woman and kind of your life is very stressful and it's a hot mess, and then your childhood dog shows up to just cuddle you and give you love? She eventually becomes Adam's main antagonist, mentoring the teenage Jonas in the hopes that he will wage war on himself and stop Adam from destroying the world. Man, talk about taking an inner conflict and making it an outer conflict. Claudia goes knowingly to her death in 1954 when she allows Noah to kill her. Claudia's father, Egon Tiedemann, is a police officer in 1953, and he's the one that investigates the disappearance of Helga Doppler and eventually arrests 2019 Ulrich for the crime. In 1986, Egon's also the one that investigates the disappearance of Mads Nielsen and suspects 1986 Ulrich is behind his brother's disappearance. He's also the one who arrests Ulrich for allegedly raping Katarina in the same year. It's always Ulrich. It's anything happens in Winden, he just thinks it's whatever version of Ulrich is running around. Lazy detective work. In 1987, Egon discovers the truth about time travel and Ulrich's identity and innocence. Too little, too late, but we'll take what we can get. Before he can rectify his actions, Egon is injured during a fight with his daughter Claudia, who then just allows him to die. Oh, this woman. Claudia lets him die to protect the God particle from being discovered and to save her daughter Regina. Now let's move on to the Dopplers, who at first seem like the least complicated family tree, but wind up being the most perplexing of all, which is saying a whole lot in this show. First, there's Elizabeth Doppler, who is the youngest child of Charlotte and Peter Doppler. She briefly dated Yasin, who was kidnapped in 2019 by Helga Doppler and killed by Noah. Elizabeth goes on to become one of the few survivors of the 2020 apocalypse and grows up to be one of the leaders of the 2052 dystopian future that Jonas time travels to. In 2053, Elizabeth even sentences Jonas to death before deciding to spare his life at literally the last second. Elizabeth's older sister is Franziska, a gymnastics-loving teen who is dating Magnus Nielsen. Although the show has not officially confirmed this yet, she is almost definitely the woman that we see with Magnus and Adam in 1921. Their mother, Charlotte Doppler, works in law enforcement with Ulrich Nielsen in 2019. She also collects a lot of dead birds and then draws them. Don't yuck anyone's yums. She was raised by her adoptive father, H.D. Tannhaus, who created the time travel device on Claudia Tiedemann's instructions and using Ulrich's phone from 2019. I'll be getting into Charlotte's real parents shortly, but first, let's talk about her husband, Peter Doppler. Peter's a therapist who remains married to Charlotte despite the fact that he's gay. He's also the one who sees Mads Nielsen fall through a hole in time and space in 2019 and calls Tronte to help him move the body. Peter's father is Helga Doppler, who's the only child of Greta and Bernd Doppler, who ran the power plant in the 50s. Helga briefly goes missing in 1953 after traveling forward in time to 1986. He does this after being attacked by the 2019 version of Ulrich Nielsen, who thought if he killed Helga in 1953, Mikkel would never go missing in 2019. It's cool if you need to pause a second to process all that. Ready to continue? Great, because it's about to get wild. After Helga returns to 1954, he meets the mysterious newcomer in town, Noah. In 1986, Noah manipulates Helga into kidnapping children to be used for experimentation with time travel, including Mads Nielsen. In 2019, Helga travels back in time to 1986 to attempt to stop his younger self from following through on Noah's orders. The older version of Helga dies there after ramming his car into the 1986 version of himself, but his younger self survives. As for Noah, he's a priest working with Adam in order to bring about the apocalypse and create a new world without time. Noah also fathers Charlotte Doppler with Elizabeth Doppler, who, through all this timey-wimey madness, is also the daughter of Charlotte and Peter Doppler. Noah is killed by Agnes in 1921 after he turns on Adam after finding out the truth about his daughter, who is also his mother-in-law. Time travel. How exactly that works will hopefully be explained soon, because my head hurts just thinking about the implications of all of this. Still have questions about Dark's connections? Because join the club and drop a comment below.